There is no greatest. There is no greatest. I mean, we spend a lot of time in the barber shops and just other places kicking it, talking about the NBA, talking about hip hop. And we like to talk about the greatest of all time, the GOATs. And everybody stood out at different times in different eras. And it's usually politics when we try to put one of these people above everybody else. It's also agenda, because there's so many. There's so many people who've had an impact at different times in their careers. There ain't no greatest. You know, Eminem, there's so many people who consider him the greatest. At the height of his career, he made a song called White America. I believe that was the record. Or was it that Till My Lungs Collapse record with Nate Dogg, where he made a whole top 10 of MCs that were better than him? And all those guys could go. All those artists that he named are legends now. Some of them don't have as big as names as others, but he felt like in his mind these guys were better than him. It's people who don't even consider, when you talk about like rap, it's people who don't consider Snoop a top 10 legend when he's probably the most famous rapper of all time. And he wasn't a weak rapper. I mean, he's actually a very good MC. He's a good writer. He can freestyle better than most of these guys still at age like 47, 48. Snoop was never considered a great. Snoop is one of the only people whose career wouldn't have changed whether Tupac and Biggie was still here or not. And a lot of artists cannot say that. The only other artist maybe they could say that is probably Jay-Z and Nas. But this guy isn't even considered a great. So what's the actual criteria? I've seen books made. I've seen all this stuff, but there's no set criteria for what's greatest. Is Michael Jordan great? Why? Because people his generation say he is, because he was the most visible. That's another thing. A lot of these people who are considered the greatest were just the most visible. You know, I think it's unfair, like New Yorkers feel like the whole top 10 of greatest rappers are all from New York. I mean, and it's easy to pick Nas and Biggie and Jay-Z and all these guys because not just they're amazing, but they all come from New York at a time where it was all about the record label and whatever the music industry put out. So if the record label's in New York or it's in LA, for years, all we had to hear was LA and New York cats. So, like I was saying, there's so many other great MCs outside of those two places. And when you really start to open your mind up, you heard Gucci Mane say, you know, I'm not bumping, ain't nobody in East Atlanta bumping no Eminem. He also said that about Jay-Z. And those are the rappers that are considered number 1 and 2. Whichever, you know, spot you want to put either one in, you wouldn't be wrong. People consider Jay-Z and Eminem at the top, a lot of people. But I could imagine where Gucci's from, he's probably considered the greatest because they value a different type of music there. I mean, you know, and that's the whole thing. You know, different regions value different things. You know, I'm actually somebody who's partial to Midwest rappers. I love Tupac. I love Biggie. I love all the greats. But when I talk about greats, my greats are like Nelly, Bone Thugs, MC Breed, Kanye, guys that come from the Midwest. And yeah, Eminem comes from the Midwest. But I'm not going to lie to you. When Eminem came out, I thought he was like a tax write-off. I thought he was a gimmick. And I started taking him serious later. But even at 30, I've been around hip hop my whole life. My dad and mom had me listening to music at a very early age. So I already had guys I thought was better than Eminem, and still to this day. Now, when you talk basketball, like I said, a lot of people like to say Michael Jordan. The bottom line is Michael Jordan said himself, Kobe's a better offensive player because he took and elevated his moves. So because Kobe took and elevated his moves, does that make him any less of a great player? Kobe also played in the same place for 20 years. You know, I look at things like that, and those make him a pretty dang good guy, especially 5 rings. You got 2 of them without Shaq, so you've proved every point you needed to prove in your 20 years in the league. You're the only guy who's played all those 90s greats. You've played all these guys who are considered the best now, and you dominated in your time. Mike did his thing, obviously. He retired a couple of times, which hindered a little bit of his legacy to me, and playing for the Wizards hindered his legacy. And LeBron, he's still living his out. People consider him the greatest. I consider him the most unstoppable. I don't consider him the greatest. Been to the finals 11 times. He only won 3 of them. Or been to the finals 8 times. Or whatever the number is. I think he's been there 11 times. Only won 3 titles. I can't consider you the greatest. I mean, I've seen you weak too many times. I've seen guys dominate you too many times, whereas in that same position, Kobe or Mike would have just fucking took over, man. Like, I've seen you cave up. So, and then you got the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars of the world and the Wilt Chamberlains and all these other guys who dominated in their eras. Why can they not be considered the greatest? See, when you say Mike is the greatest, it starts to come down to timing. You come into a league that Michael and Larry built, 2 other guys that could be considered the greatest. They built this league for you to come into and put on a show and dominate and take over. And as the money and the visibility's coming up, you're the best player. So how is it not that we could not call you the greatest? It's obvious that's what's going to happen. You know, people say all the time, Jordan couldn't handle the game in the early 80s. And I can see it. The guys were way more physical. And the league got softer over the years, so the higher scoring guys can put butts in the seats. So like I said, man, I'm not going to keep this too long. A lot of this whole greatest thing is about visibility. Who was the most visible? It's a lot of politics, but you can never really get a sure answer. And you shouldn't want one, really. I'm to the point now, I just like to enjoy everybody's different, unique skill sets when it comes to the sports, and even in the music, all the different flavors of the guys from the past, the guys, you know, that are here now, and even in the future. It's okay to just be a fan without saying, hey, who's the best? The conversations are fun, but let's not drive ourselves crazy. Let's just enjoy the ride. We live in a country with the best entertainment. It's kid. These is the beginning stages of this channel, so could you please like and subscribe? I'm going to make it to where you can comment and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm going to be putting up something every day. Maybe want more than one thing. I just want to engage y'all, see where y'all's heads at out here as we grow and roll into this new era, this new age of life. Holla.